Yes, how are we all? I hope all is well. My name is Sachin, and this is the Total Cricket Podcast, episode 30. Today, I'm going to be reviewing the first test between Bangladesh and Australia, so let's get right into it. Bangladesh won this one by 20 runs and took a 1-0 lead in the series. What a historic game this was. Bangladesh's first test win over Australia, and what a great test match it was, full stop. A real thriller this was. You don't see too many winning margins smaller than 20 runs. So it was a fantastic game to watch, so many ebbs and flows, and a real positive result for cricket, seeing Bangladesh's rise continue. And we saw in the space of 2 days the West Indies winning against England and Bangladesh winning against Australia. Really great results for Test cricket. Now, I'll begin with the team news, and Bangladesh came in as I suspected. Changes from their last test match. Nasir Hossain came in for Mossadegh Hossain, who has an eye infection, and Shafaiul Islam came in for Subhashish Roy. Now, Australia, again, pretty much as expected. Usman Khawaja making a comeback to the team at number 3. Glenn Maxwell retained his place. Ashton Agar coming in for Steve O'Keefe. Now, I'll begin with the recap. And Bangladesh, they won the all-important toss. And as you would expect, they elected to bat on what looked like a spinning wicket. Now, in the first innings, they managed a pretty respectable 260. Tamim Iqbal and Shakib Al Hassan, the main contributors, with 71 and 84 respectively. But there wasn't much help for them from the rest of the batsmen. Australia's bowlers, they did a pretty good job. Josh Hazlewood kept it tight, although he went wicketless. Pat Cummins, Nathan Lyon, and Ashton Agar all got 3 wickets apiece. Glenn Maxwell got the crucial wicket of Tamim. Australia's reply was a bit substandard, it must be said. 217 all out, conceding a lead of 43, crucial lead in the first innings. And there were no 50s in this innings. That pretty much sums it up. The top scorer, Matt Renshaw, with 45. Contributions from Ben Hanscom, Glenn Maxwell with a couple of starts, but it was really Ashton Agar with 41 not out and Pat Cummins with 25 down the order that pushed Australia up to something that kept them in the game. Shakib Al Hassan, the star once again for Bangladesh, 5 wickets for him. Mehidy Hassan picked up 3, Taijul got 1, and there was also the run out of Usman Khawaja. Bangladesh in the second innings managing 221 to set Australia 265 for victory. Tamim once again with a 50, he managed 78. Also Mushfiqur, he chipped in with 41. Sabir 22 and Mehidy 26 to push that target over the 250 mark. But again, not much else from the rest of the batsmen. Australia's bowlers, Nathan Lyon, the pick of the bowlers, with a 6-fer. He took 9 in the game. Pat Cummins got a wicket. Josh Hazlewood, he was only able to bowl 4 overs. He had to leave the field with a side strain that has subsequently ruled him out of the rest of the tour. Ashton Agar picking up 2 wickets, and once again there was a run out, Mushfiqur run out at the bowler's end. Australia in their chase, well, they got off to a really good start thanks to David Warner, a brilliant 100 from him, 112 of 135 deliveries. He got able support from Steve Smith with 37, and things were looking good for Australia at 2 for 158. They needed just the 107 more runs to win with 8 wickets in hand, but then the collapse began with Warner and Smith falling in very quick succession and the rest of the batting subsiding. Pat Cummins once again doing a good job, 33 not out. That provided Australia a little bit of hope of a miracle towards the end, but it always was going to be a little bit too much to do with just the tail. Once again, Shakib with a 5-fer, taking 10 for the match, his second 10-fer in his career. Mehidy getting 2, and Taijul taking 3. Mustafizur only bowled the 1 over in this innings, and in fact he only bowled 9 overs in the game. Shafaiul didn't even bowl in this innings, only 6 overs in the game for him. So Bangladesh really not using their pace bowlers at all, relying definitely on their spinners, who took all 20 wickets in this game. In fact, they took 19 wickets. There was also a run out. And that was that. A thrilling test match, brilliant result for Bangladesh, and another defeat in Asia for the Australians. And I will begin with Bangladesh, and this was fantastic from Bangladesh. Their evolution as a test team continues. In the last 3 years, they've played 11 tests at home, they've won 5, they've lost 2, and they've drawn 4. so they're now becoming a very difficult team to beat at home. And I think now we can say that they are a competitive test team because the least you can be as a test nation is to be good at home. And Bangladesh are definitely that. They haven't had many opportunities away from home, to be fair. But they won their last away test match in Sri Lanka. So the signs are very good for Bangladesh at the moment. If you think about the last year, what they've done, they've won their first tests against England, Sri Lanka, and now Australia. It seems like every game they play is historic at the moment. Things are really looking up for Bangladesh cricket, and it's great to see. I'll start with the batting, and Tamim Iqbal, once again, just a stalwart at the top of the order. Tamim, he got 250s in the game. I think he'll be disappointed not to have got 100 in the first innings. A nothing shot, really, one that gripped and bounced a bit more than he'd expected, but really just poked at it off Glenn Maxwell and was caught at slip by David Warner. And in the second innings, to be fair, got an unplayable delivery from Pat Cummins that just reared up and he gloved it and he was caught behind. Tamim is one of the best test openers in the world. He's very underrated because he plays for Bangladesh, but the thing is, this guy just keeps delivering time and time again. And what's insane is that he's still only 28. He's been around seemingly forever, close to a decade, Tamim. And when you look at his record, this was his 50th test match. He averages 40. He's got close to 4,000 runs, 800s, 24 50s. He is a top class test opener. Any test opener that averages 40, you're very good. Tamim has matured so much in recent years. That's the biggest thing. When he came into the scene, he was flashy, really talented, but didn't quite have the temperament. But he's really refined his game, and he's a lot more subdued than he once was, Tamim. Really, if you looked at his strike rates in this game, both innings were sub 50. So he definitely took his time, and really excellent from Tamim Iqbal. The evolution, the improvement I've seen, always had all the shots, like genuinely all the shots. It's incredible the repertoire of shots he has, but now the temperament, the discipline to his game, he is an elite test batsman. Now, Shomya Sharka, he had a disappointing game, it must be said. Shomya Sharka, in the first innings, he was squared up by Pat Cummins and caught in the gully by Peter Hanscom. In the second innings, though, this was a shocking dismissal from Shomya, coming down the ground to Ashton Agar, looking to hit him for 6, and well, he just didn't quite get it. Usman Khawaja, how on earth did he catch that? He juggled it about 3 times, but he managed to haul it in the end. There were only 11 balls to go there at the end of day 2, and he goes for that shot. That's just not the right option. That's a lack of game awareness from Shomya, and he'll be very disappointed with that. Looking at Shomya Sharka, it's interesting. He's come back into the test team as an opener, made his debut as a lower order batsman, 6-7, but the injury to Imrul Kais really opened the door for him to come back in that second test match against New Zealand, and he's been the opener ever since. And the thing for Shomya is that if you looked at the 4 tests that he'd played as an opener before this one, he'd made double-figure scores in all of the 8 innings he'd played, but crucially, no hundreds, 450s, but no hundreds. And that was the issue, that it wasn't going on as an opener. If you survive the new ball, you really need to make sure you kick on. And he hasn't been able to do that. And in this test, he didn't even get the starts that he has been getting in basically every innings. Prior to this, 8 and 15 in this game. And looking at Shomya, does he have the technique to be a really good test opener? I don't know. At the end of the day, he's a bit of a manufactured opener. And he does seem to get himself out. He hasn't shown the discipline or the concentration to be able to score big totals so far. I know it's a bit harsh because he has scored runs, but I think what I'm about to say next will certainly vindicate my thoughts on this. Imrul Kais batting at number 3 yet again, and he struggled in this game. He got a duck and 2 in the first innings. That was a woeful shot, caught behind, slashing off Pat Cummins by Wade. And then in the second innings, he can count himself a little bit unlucky, I think. Really, it was an unplayable delivery from Nathan Lyon, and it took the shoulder of his bat and it lobbed to David Warner at second slip. Imrul Kais is not a number 3 batsman, right? It's as simple as that. He came in back at number 3 after his injury in that second test against Sri Lanka because really Shomya had taken his place. Imrul Kais had been Bangladesh's opener for quite a while. He had a bit of a hiatus out of the team from 2011 to 2014, Imrul, but he came back in. And in the 9 games that he played as an opener since his comeback, he averaged 50 in Test cricket. 50 for a Bangladeshi Test opener. That is incredible. So Imrul had been doing a great job opening the batting, but then he was injured. I think he picked up a hamstring injury, I believe, in that first Test match against New Zealand. And so Shumya came in, and then he was performing pretty decently. So when Imrul returned from injury, he was shoehorned into the team back at number 3. But batting at number 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 compared to opening is so different. It really is. Positions like 3 and 4, they're not too different. 6 and 7, they're not too different. But opening compared to any other position is very difficult. Imran has talked about how he's found it difficult. He's a natural opener. Batting at number 3 is weird to him. Shumya is a manufactured opener. So really, in the long term, this is not how I see the Bangladeshi order. I feel like Imrul has to return to the opening slot where he's been performing so well recently. And Shumi Sharkar is not really an opener, I feel, and he needs to drop down the order. Really, the number 3 has to be Mominul Haq. Mominul had a little bad spell, his first bad spell in his career. He'd had such an incredible start to his career, and then you just drop him. He's a Test specialist. He doesn't play a lot. He doesn't get a lot of continuity because Bangladesh don't play a lot of Tests. But to drop Mominul was a huge mistake, I think, from Bangladesh. And they need to reinstate him to the number 3 position as soon as possible. He's your long-term number 3. I don't know what they're playing at with that. Imrul opening the batting with Tamim, Mominul Haq at 3 is what Bangladesh need to do. Now, Sabir Rahman, he had an interesting test. He got a golden duck in the first innings. Really, this one was a bit of an odd one. He sort of hit the ball on the ground at the same time. It was really full delivery from Pat Cummins that swung away late, took the outside edge through to Matthew Wade. And then in the second innings, well, it was just a classic bat pad dismissal really for Sabir. He did make 23, hit a few boundaries in there. With Sabir, his talent is clear. He's got such a great range of strokes, but he hasn't quite really translated that into runs at the Test level. Still only averaging in the low 30s. If you noticed, he batted at 4 in the first innings, but I think Bangladesh, rightly so, putting him back down to 6 in the second. Mushfiqur coming in at 4, or at least if you take out Taijul as the night watchman. Mushfiqur should be batting at 4 definitely in this lineup. Sabir at 6. Ultimately, Sabir still not a refined player, and technically speaking, there's still a lot to work on for him to match his audacious stroke play. I think he needs to just refine his technique a little bit, and if he can do that, then he's going to be a really good player, but an extremely good talent for Bangladesh. Still young, one that they need to persist with, I feel, Sabir. Now, Shakib Al Hassan, what a player he is. The best all-rounder in Test cricket, especially in Asian conditions. The guy is a fantastic, fantastic player, hugely underrated. He is an incredible cricketer. I mean, let's look at his record. This was, again, just like Tamim, his 50th Test. 3,500 Test runs, average of 41. He's got 500s, including a double 100. He's taken 186 wickets at 32, with 17 5-wicket hauls and 2 10-wicket hauls. This was his second 10-wicket haul in this game. What a record that is. This guy undisputably would get into the team as a batsman or as a bowler, and that is the truest definition of an all-rounder. I don't think you could say that about any other player in world cricket, even Ben Stokes, although he is, I believe, in seeming conditions, the best all-rounder in the world. Would he get into that English team just based on his bowling? I don't think so. So Shakib is just a unique case when it comes to all-rounders in world cricket, and certainly deserves more respect. He was superb in this game, getting 84 in the first innings, sharing that huge 155-run stand for the 4th wicket with Tamim that really set up the game for Bangladesh after they were reeling at 3 down for just the 10 runs. And with Shakib, he's got all the shots. We know this. He's such a talented stroke maker, and yet again, that was what he did. His downfall, as usual, was a little bit of a lack of discipline, and he sort of just poked at one pretty hard off Nathan Lyon, which flew to Steve Smith at first slip. In the second innings, this was a bit of a classic Shakib dismissal, out for 5 against Nathan Lyon. Tried to hit him over the top, skied it, and was caught in the outfield. With Shakib, we see a lot of times when he gets out, they're really reckless shots. We often see him trying to go over the top and either getting stumped or he holds out in the deep. The thing about Shakib is that his batting, particularly at the beginning of his innings, really is very reckless, I feel, more often than not. But the thing about Shakib is that he doesn't change that because he says that's the way he plays, and at the end of the day, it still works more often than not. And if that works for him and it's working for Bangladesh, then you can't really complain. If he wasn't getting any runs, definitely you could say you got to work on that. But that's the way he plays, to be honest. And sometimes he looks like an idiot, but sometimes he looks like a genius. And in the second innings, he did look a little bit stupid, but again, he'd already done the job really in the first innings. But how about his bowling in this game? 10 for. He took a 5 for in both innings, and he is just a gem of a bowler, Shakib Al Hassan. He bowls the ball at a good pace. It's usually in between 80 to 85 kilometers an hour. He's got a round arm action, and he doesn't have any variations really. There's nothing flashy about his bowling. He just puts the ball there and he gets it to spin. He gets great drift, great loop, and really gets the ball to drop nicely. A lot of side spin on those balls, so he does spin it a mile. And because of that, when it does go straight on with the arm, the batsman really usually that's the one that gets them out. So with Shakib's bowling, the thing I love about Shakib is if you watch the game, when he does drop a little bit short, gives the batsman a release ball, he gets so angry with himself. He just strives for greatness, Shakib. He is so into the game. The interesting thing about Shakib is that he really has two sides to him. Sometimes he's very stoic and he doesn't really give his emotions away, and at other times he just erupts. It's really interesting to see at different points when Shakib is just very calm, and other times he is just so emotional. He's a really interesting character. What a servant he's been for Bangladesh cricket, the best cricketer they've ever produced, no doubt, a supreme cricketer in the world of cricket. And I think his presence is going to go a long way to really changing the fortunes of Bangladesh. Him, Tamim, Mushfiqur, the three pillars of this new era of Bangladeshi cricket. And speaking of Mushfiqur, he had a nice game, got a crucial 41 in the second innings. He'll count himself a little bit unlucky to get run out of the balls, and although he didn't really show sort of a desire to get back into his crease, he was just ball watching. It was a bit bizarre, a bit lazy from Mushfiqur, but nonetheless, he did a good job to push that lead up in the first innings as well. He hung around until he was trapped in front by Ashton Agar. Just that old ball from the left arm orthodox that goes straight on with the arm, put the pad out, and it was a simple decision for Nigel Long. Really, I think as a right-hand batsman facing the left arm spinner, you have to get your pad out of the way. I think you'd rather get out when they either take the outside edge or beat the outside edge than getting beaten on the inside edge. I think that's something you really have to do as a right-hand batsman against a left-arm orthodox. But I also like Mushfiqur's captaincy in this one. I thought particularly on that final day when he brought in Mehedi Hassan to get rid of Nathan Lyon, and then when he was getting spanked around a bit by Pat Cummins, then he brought Taijul back in. So that was really smart stuff from Mushfiq, and we know as a batsman how he's come on a lot recently, and he's obviously a real stalwart of the batting lineup. He isn't the most talented player, but he has such great discipline. He occupies the crease for long periods of time, and that kind of attitude from the captain is a great thing to have. A guy who's willing to back time for the team, the discipline that's required, the application that's required, that is a great thing to have, and I think Bangladesh are lucky to have Mushfiqur. Now, Nasir Hussain had a pretty poor test match, it must be said. He did hang around in the first innings, it must be said, 23 of 61 deliveries, until once again he was also trapped in front, just lunging forward to Ashton Agar. Same principle applies. What I said about Mushfiqur Rahim getting that pad out of the way. But in the second innings, he was pretty disappointing, got a duck, and in this one, he was caught behind of Agar. He was looking to cut. Really, there was no way that was cuttable, just way too close to the body, and he got an under edge. It was actually a very good catch from Matthew Wade. Nasir Hussain also, he didn't really bowl. He only bowled the 4 overs in the game. He wasn't really needed, even though he's an all-rounder. Bangladesh had 3 spinners already, and they have the off-spinner in Mehedi, so he doesn't really add anything new to the bowling lineup. So with Nasir Hussain, he's a decent batsman. He has a test 100. He's got an average of over 35, yes. But is he in Bangladesh's best 11? I don't know. Is he in Bangladesh's best 7 batsmen? I'd have to say no. I'm looking at this Bangladesh batting lineup, and I think it's not their best batting lineup. As I said, I believe that Imrul should be batting with Tamim at the top. Mominul at 3, then just like they did in the second innings, Mushfiqur at 4, Shakib at 5. But then I think what's interesting to note is that when you look at the bowling lineup, they've got 3 spinners that do all the work in Bangladesh. Shafaul only bowled 6 overs in this game, and it was also Mustafizur only bowled 9 overs in the game. So the fast bowlers barely did any work. The spinners, Mehedi, Shakib, and Taiju, did pretty much all the work. So is there really the need for that second fast bowler for Bangladesh in Bangladesh? I don't think so. I feel like they are better off playing an extra batsman. And to that end, I believe that Mahmudullah should be batting at 6 for this team. Yes, he's had a bad run in Test cricket in the past year. I understand that he's been averaging, I believe it's 25 in his last 6 tests. But the thing is, Mahmudullah is an experienced campaigner who's played many great innings for Bangladesh, particularly in the ODI circuit. He offers off spin as well, just like Nasir Hussain, bit of part-time off spin. So are you telling me that Nasir Hussain's a better batsman than Mahmudullah? Come on now. I know Mahmudullah only averages 30 in Test cricket, but really, I think he's worth his weight more than the numbers. He adds a lot to this team in his calmness and his experience. I think Mahmudullah should be batting at 6, and then, as I said, you just play the one fast bowler. You could play an extra batsman. So at 7 and 8, you can have 2 of Nasir Hussain, Shumya Shaka, and Sabir Rahman. I think that's the way Bangladesh should go in Bangladesh. That's the flexibility that Shakib offers you. You could play the extra batsman, and they've got a lot of good batting talent, so they should use it. So yes, that's it for me on Bangladesh's batting. Now onto their bowling, and well, they bowled absolutely beautifully in this game. Just a quick word on the fast bowler. Shafaul only bowled in the first innings, just for 6 overs for him. Really not helpful conditions. He didn't trouble at all in those 6 overs he bowled. The reality is, on these kind of pitches, if you don't bowl quick, if you don't bowl 140 plus, you're not going to be super effective, I believe. Same can be said for Mustafizur. He bowled the 8 overs in the first innings. Very economical, only meant for the 13 runs. But I think his lines and lengths weren't great. Strayed a little bit, a bit too far outside the off stump to begin with. Then in his second spell, a little bit too far down leg side. Wasn't super threatening. Trying to get things to happen, I guess. In the second innings, just bowled the 1 over that went for 8 runs. Again, he's not someone who's very quick, Mustafizur. We know how skillful a bowler he is, but in these conditions, it's difficult for him. I see him being the lone fast bowler for Bangladesh, or really, they could look to Taskin, who does bowl 140 plus. But the issue with Taskin is that he has no control, and he doesn't really do a lot with the ball. It's usually just coming on fast and straight and wild. That's easy pickings for a lot of good Test batsmen. So I think with Bangladesh's fast bowlers, as I said, they can afford to only play 1, I believe, in the second match. And just in general in Bangladesh, if I'm being honest. And as we saw, I talk about that need for pace in Asia. We saw with Pat Cummins what that did. So yes, that's it for the Bangladesh fast bowlers. The spinners were the main act for Bangladesh. Mehedi Hasan, I thought he bowled beautifully in the first innings, 3 for 62 in the 26 overs. In the second innings, he was a little bit expensive. David Warner really took a liking to him. He got 2 wickets, and the crucial wicket at the end of Nathan Lyon when things were getting a little bit dicey. 2 for 80 in the 19 overs he bowled. Mehedi getting 5 for the game. This guy's an extremely talented bowler. He's played 8 Test matches. He's got 40 wickets. I mean, he's had a fantastic start to his career, and he's only 19. This is the crazy thing about Mehedi Hasan. He's 19. Yes, sometimes he drops short. That is unquestionable, but he's 19 again. I'm sure he's going to improve his control in later years. But the thing I love is that his bowling is just so simple. The way the off break comes out, it's just a perfect off spinner. But he doesn't bowl any other balls. It's uncomplicated, much like Shakib, much like Taiju. The Bangladeshi spinners are simple but effective. Mehedi gets beautiful drift onto the ball. They all do this really well, I feel. They're able to drift the ball in, they get good drop on the ball, they get a nice loop, and they're able to then get it to spin sharply or go on with the arm. That's just really the variation in the pitch. So they really have the tools to succeed in these conditions, these 3 spinners. And the other thing about Mehedi is that he bats well. He got crucial contributions in this game, 18 and 23, I believe it was, in the second innings. No, 26. Now, if you look at Mehedi, the start of his Test career, in his first 8 innings, he got only 20 runs. But since then, he averages 30 with the bat. And that's kind of more like it because he was actually an elite all-rounder at the under-19 level. So it's good to see his batting really now coming to the fore at the test level. And I think in the future he can be a legitimate all-rounder, Mehdi Hassan. He's already got one Test 50. I see many more for him in the future. Definitely going to be a huge star in world cricket for years to come, Mehdi Hassan. Now, the final player in the Bangladesh team to talk about is Taijul Islam, the specialist in Asia. Taijul Islam is the second quickest Bangladesh bowler to get to 50 wickets in this game. So congratulations to him. He did it in just his 14th test, this one. He took 1 wicket in the first innings, didn't bowl too much, just the 8 overs. And in the second innings, he got the 3 wickets, including the crucial last wicket when Pat Cummins was looking very dangerous. The thing about Taijul, obviously, he's a left-arm orthodox, and when you compare him to Shakib, he's got a higher arm than Shakib. Very similar. Mehdi releases the ball from really the vertical, quite similar to Taijul as well. Shakib is round arm a bit. Taijul, you get more of a high release. He's also quicker than Shakib on average, more in the 85 to 90 kilometers an hour range. He gets more overspin on the ball than Shakib. And he's actually really dangerous to the left hands, as I find Taijul, because of that overspin he gets. He's really quite dangerous in that regard. And to be fair, I think he struggled with his lines and lengths for the majority of this test match, particularly to David Warner, was just way too full, also dropped a bit short on occasion. But when he got it right, he was really good. So for Taijul, if he can just be more consistent, then he's going to be a really good foil. He already is a really good foil to the deadly duo of Mehdi Hassan and Shakib Al Hasan. But Taijul is certainly a very effective third spinner for Bangladesh, does the job really nicely, it must be said. So that's it for the Bangladesh team. What a win for them. And I think they'll be looking to try and win the series 2-0 when it goes to Chittagong. Now, on to the Australians. And well, the same old story for Australia in Asia. Looks like the pay dispute didn't really change anything in terms of their on-field performance in this part of the world. Incredibly, they've played 23 tests in Asia in the last decade. They've won 2, they've drawn 5, and they've lost 16. That's the worst record of any non-Asian team other than Zimbabwe. And that's saying something. That is absolutely disgusting from Australia. And they continue to fall prey to the same errors. The batters are just making horrific choices when it comes to shot selection. And that's the big issue. Their bowlers have been keeping them in games, in the tours to Sri Lanka, to India, and now here. But the batting has let them down so much. And it was particularly the first innings batting. They got more in the second innings than the first innings. How does that make sense when the pitch is deteriorating like it does in Bangladesh? Really, it was just completely bizarre to see. And once again, baffling from Australia. Definitely one of their worst losses in Test cricket. Not so much, this is not disrespectful to Bangladesh, but rather it's just down to the proud cricketing history of Australia to sink as low as they have. They're 6th in the world in the Test rankings, incredibly. And really, can you argue with that at the moment? I don't think so. So I'll start with the batting for Australia. David Warner, well, he got rid of his Asian blues in the first innings. Pretty standard dismissal for him, trapped plumb in front by Mehdi Hassan, but in the second innings, he got a fantastic 112 of 135. I liked the way he changed his stance. If you had a look at the way he played to the left-arm orthodox, he was making sure that he was getting his pad outside the line of off-stump, which meant that he couldn't get LBW. And against the off-spinner, he was making sure he got his pad out of the way so that he didn't get, again, LBW, both to basically rule out the LBW, and he did that very effectively. So it was good to see David Warner learning. I think the biggest thing in the second innings for David Warner was just the clarity of his thought process. I think he's been a little bit tentative, a little bit too defensive against spin recently, but in this innings he just played how David Warner plays, just taking it to the bowler at every possible opportunity, and that really helped him. But to be honest, the shot that he got out to in the second innings was completely unnecessary. I don't know what that shot was. LBW to Shakib, and that started the slide. When you're in the 4th innings in Bangladesh on a turning track, you have to make sure you do everything you can to stay in. And really, even though at the time it seemed like an insignificant dismissal, it was the catalyst for the collapse. So I think for David Warner, a good game, but nonetheless he'll be disappointed with that. A career-defining innings, though it must be said, coming into this game, averaging 29 in Asia. There have been big question marks about his ability to play spin, but this was a huge innings for him. And certainly we saw David Warner just how destructive he is with his stroke play when he's at his best. So this is the blueprint for David Warner to play as he usually does back in Australia. I think that is definitely how he should go about things in the future. Now, Matt Renshaw, he had a tough test. He battled hard in the first innings, really, with a nice 45. That was the top score. In the second innings, though, only managing just the 5 runs. Now, in both innings, he got out to balls that just went on with the arm. Now, that's a cardinal sin in these conditions. You should be playing for the ball that basically goes on with the arm. And if it spins past your outside edge, you just have to accept that. But I think you've got to protect that straight for that. You've got to protect for that straight delivery. And he didn't quite do that, Matt Renshaw, particularly in the second innings, where he just played all around it and was LBW 2-1 that just went straight on from Mahedi Hassan. But I like Matt Renshaw. He's a good player, he has an excellent temperament. He's got a pretty good technique as well. What I would like to see him do is use his feet more to the spinners, be a little bit more proactive. But certainly he's a young guy still, very new to Test cricket. This was just his 9th game, 21 years old. He's going to be a big player for Australia in the future. Now, Usman Khawaja, wow, was he abysmal in this game. The guy looks simply clueless in Asia, if I'm being honest. Got 1 in both innings. That run out in the first innings really showed you how muddled his mind is. He obviously was nervous. His brain was fuzzy. And as such, you get these questionable decisions that he made. And wow, there was no run there. Absolutely ridiculous. And then in the second innings, he was trying to take it to the bowlers and he just top-edged one, a sweep down to deep square leg. But Usman Khawaja, his troubles in Asia continue. He averages under 15 in the 5 tests that he's played in Asia. That is absolutely unacceptable for the number 3 to be a walking wicket. And really, when I look at Usman Khawaja, you have to say he's a flat-track bully. He averages 63 at home and 27 away. And as I said before, 14.62 in Asia. The thing about Khawaja is that he just doesn't have a clear plan against spin. He doesn't use his feet very well. He doesn't have a sweep. Doesn't have a release shot against the spin. And you can see he's trying to survive. He's defensive in his mindset, and that's never going to help. And I feel like Australia will look to take him out of the firing line for the next test. Definitely wouldn't be surprised if he is dropped for that game in Chittagong. Now, Steve Smith, he had a rare, disappointing game in this one, only managing just the 8 in the first innings and 37 in the second innings. And 2 very soft dismissals from Stephen Smith, inexplicably missing the ball when he came down the wicket against Mahedi in the first innings. And then in the second, too close to cut, getting a fine nick to Mushfiqur Rahim. Now, for Steve Smith, this was just poor execution from Steve Smith. We know he's the best test batsman in the world, averages over 60 in the format. He's an incredible batsman, but in this game, he did not quite do it. And it exposed Australia's real dependence on him, that they just weren't able to do enough when he did not deliver. But it wasn't great to see him fall to those types of dismissals, for sure. Now, Peter Handscomb, he once again got some starts but did not quite deliver. He was trapped plumb in front in the first innings for 33 off Tijul. He's a back foot player and he got way too deep in his crease here, the ball going on with the arm, and a simple decision. And then in the second innings, again, another cut shot, too close to cut. It turned and bounced, and it was a great catch actually on the bubble by Shumyashaka. But for Peter Handscomb, really, if you look at his recent test form, there are so many starts, but just not a lot of substance. Going from the India tour, these are his scores: 22, 19, 16, 24, 19, 72 not out, 8, 18, 33, 15. So many starts, but just not going on. Only 150, incredibly, from those 10 innings. So really for Peter Handscomb, he's just simply not showing the discipline. It's a lapse in concentration. He's a good player of spin. He uses his feet really well, very proactive, but he's just finding ways to get himself out. And as I've said before, I think that's a bit of an issue, that he's such a back foot player. Getting deep into your crease against the spin, it's a dangerous thing. Allowing the ball to spin like that when it goes onto the arm, when he goes on with the arm and skids on, it's just really not a great strategy. So I think Peter Handscomb needs to work on that. On to Glenn Maxwell, and well, this was a very typical Maxwell game. Got 23 and 14 in this game. The first innings, he was just bamboozled by Shakib, who threw it out a little bit wider, dropped the length back a little bit, and he was stumped emphatically. And then in the second innings, incredibly, first ball after lunch, goes back to the ball, tries to cut it, and is once again bowled. Now, there's a team of the Australian batsmen trying to cut. On spinning pitches, the cut is a very difficult shot to play because variable bounce and variable spin really makes the cut shot, and in general, horizontal bat strokes really difficult to play. If you look at the second innings, right, we saw Warner, Khawaja, Smith, Hanscom, and Maxwell all fall to cross bat shots. Even Nathan Lyon there with a sweep at the end. So I'm not sure that those cross bat shots are the way to go. You need to play straight, I feel. If you're going to sweep, you need to be good at it. Don't just sweep for the sake of it. If you don't play the shot well, don't play it. But the best thing to do is to come down the ground and play straight. That's what David Warner did, particularly driving through the covers. That is a good thing. These cross-bat strokes, the same mistakes all the batsmen made. It's really disappointing for the Australian team. So, Glenn Maxwell, well, at the end of the day, the guy averages 23 in Test cricket in 6 games. He made a great 100 in his comeback there against Ranchi, but is he a long-term number 6 for Australia? Will we see him batting at number 6 in the Ashes? I would say no. I think Glenn Maxwell still, for all the talent he has, just doesn't quite have it all together in his head. And that's the real disappointing thing. Yeah, he can bowl a bit, but is he really an asset worth keeping around? I would say no. It's not like he's a great bowler. So I think definitely clouds on his position, but I think luckily for him, Usman Khawaja will be a bigger priority to get out for the second test. So I expect him to play again, but it's going to be a big test for him because I think if he fails, he's going to find himself out of the team come the Ashes. Now, Matthew Wade continued to look absolutely clueless against spin. He has been absolutely dreadful since his return to the team. Since he came back in the Australian summer, he's averaged 21 with the bat. And bear in mind that he was brought back in for Peter Neville because he's a better batsman. Well, he certainly hasn't showed it, and particularly against the spin. How many times did he get trapped in front LBW? He looks clueless. He doesn't have a plan. Seems like all he can do is sweep. But really, he's just a sit-in duck, putting that front foot, that pad way out there, basically telling the spinners, here, hit that front pad. He's telling you to hit it, basically. It's unbelievable how he's still around. And again, is he someone that Australia can afford to keep around? I don't think so. I don't think he's the best wicketkeeper in Australia. He dropped a catch in this game, Mushfiq, although it didn't matter. It was a regulation catch, a ball that didn't deviate particularly. He dropped it, and we know his wicket-keeping has been very mediocre since his return. And I think what's alarming for Australia is that he let 30 byes through. 30 byes. That is, wow. That is something else. So, really, Matthew Wade, is he a liability? Absolutely in this team. And spare a thought for Peter Neville. To be fair, his average is not much better. He averages 22 in the 17 tests that he's played, but he's a much better wicketkeeper than Matthew Wade. And also, Peter Neville got 2 first-class hundreds in the 5 games that he played for New South Wales when he returned to the team. So, really, I just don't understand how Matthew Wade is still around. I think an interesting explanation could be the fact that he talks, he sledges Matthew Wade. If you look at Peter Neville, he was very quiet behind the stumps, and after that defeat, that humiliating defeat at Hobart against South Africa, basically Australia sort of were looking to rediscover their identity, that aggression in the Australian team. Matthew Wade, he talks a hell of a lot behind the stumps, does a lot of sledging, and I think that really was the thing that swung in his favour, if I'm being honest, because Matthew Wade is a mediocre batsman at the end of the day, and he's a terrible keeper. So I think Peter Neville can consider himself a little bit hard done by, and I believe that Australia would be better off going with Peter Neville than Matthew Wade, or perhaps looking elsewhere for the summer against England, because Matthew Wade is, just like Usman Khawaja at the moment, a walking wicket. Now, on to the bowling for Australia, and the bowlers kept them in the game while the batsmen completely floundered as per usual in Asia. The bowlers really did a good job. Josh Hazlewood, economical in the first innings but didn't take a wicket, and then the second innings only able to bowl the 4 overs before he was down with a side strain, which has ruled him out of the rest of the tour and the limited overs tour to India. So he faces a race against time to be fit for the Ashes. So Australia will be certainly praying that he gets fit. Josh Hazlewood, the thing about him in these kind of conditions, I feel, is that because he doesn't quite bowl quick enough, he bowls about 135, Josh Hazlewood, that he doesn't quite have the penetration. These pitches don't have the bounce or the lateral movement that he's used to, and so he struggles to get wickets. Although his control is excellent, so he does bowl economically, he's not a guy who's going to take hauls in Asia, I feel. And as I said, with the Bangladeshi fast bowlers, you need to be 140 plus, I feel, to be a really good fast bowler in Asia. Pace is a big thing in Asia for fast bowlers. Now, Patrick Cummins, I thought he was excellent in this game with the ball, getting those 3 quick wickets up front in the first innings. He has so much pace, bowls consistently 145. He has good control as well, which I think is his biggest asset, I would say, because it's one thing to bowl fast, but he's able to control it. Has a great bouncer as well on him that really troubles the batsman. We saw that dismissal of Tamim in the second innings. What a delivery that was. But Pat Cummins has been really good since his return. He's only played 4 test matches still, can you believe it? But he's played 3 of those in Asia, 2 in India, and now this one. He's taken 12 wickets in those games at an average of sub 30. He's actually very dangerous in Asian conditions. Imagine what he'll be like in more seamer-friendly conditions. You can only imagine. So Australia will be hoping that he can stay fit. I thought his batting was really good as well. In the first innings, he got 25 to get them to a respectable total, restrict that deficit. And then in the second innings, he made Australia dream of a miracle with those lusty blows off Mahedi Hassan, but ultimately he was left stranded. So really a big positive for Australia definitely is Pat Cummins. Now, Ashton Agar. I thought Ashton Agar was another positive for Australia. Did really well with the bat in the first innings, getting 41 not out to again with Pat Cummins, guide Australia 2-2-17, really restrict the deficit. Disappointing dismissal in the second innings, just chipping it back to Tydril, but it's clear that he offers something with the bat. But I think it was his bowling that really stood out, and it was really worthy of being a frontline bowler. I think there were concerns about whether he was a true frontline spinner, but he bowled really well in this game, took 3 wickets in the first innings, and then followed that up with 2 in the second. So 5 for the game, provided able support to Nathan Lyon. He had good control, and he was able to get the ball to spin sometimes and go on with the arm, using that pitch variation to his advantage. He's a tall bowler, he gets a little bit of bounce, and I think Ashton Agar is definitely someone that can be a big player for Australia in the future because he can bat well. And again, great field, as I've talked about before. So that was another positive for Australia. Now, Nathan Lyon, he had a great game. Nathan Lyon took 9 wickets, 6 for in the second innings. He overtook Richie Benaud's tally and subsequently got to 250 test wickets, became the second leading wicket taker for Australia in terms of spinners, behind obviously Shane Warne. So a great achievement for Nathan Lyon. Nathan Lyon's a good spinner, there's no doubt about it. But there's been question marks about his ability to win games for Australia when they depend on him. If you looked at his record in the second innings in Asia coming into this game, it was 49 average. That is not good enough. So those were the big questions. In conditions that are favourable, was Nathan Lyon able to win games for Australia? And in this game, he did as much as he could, I think. He bowled beautifully, 9 wickets in the game, 6 in the second innings. That's what you want from your main spinner. I thought he bowled excellently. We know he gets a lot of bounce with the overspin that he gets, and that's really because he bowls in Australia. And the issue has been adapting to these Asian conditions, getting a little bit more side spin on the ball, and he's got that. We know he gets a lot of nice drift. He puts a beautiful loop on the ball, and he's improved his control over the years. He's definitely a good spinner, Nathan Lyon. He's certainly not the best in the world, but he's a good spinner for Australia, sometimes mocked, but he's a good bowler, Nathan Lyon. And really, when you consider his record in Australia, where he averages, I believe it's 33, that's fantastic in Australia. It's usually a graveyard for spinners, but he does such a good job there. And now it's just about him doing more overseas. And this was really a career-defining game for him, getting big wickets in Asia, particularly in the second innings. That's what he needs to do more often, Nathan Lyon. So excellent work from him in this game. And that is it for Australia. Now we look to the second test in Chittagong that starts on Monday. I expect another spin-friendly track, just like the one we saw against England late last year. That's going to be a big one. Can Australia fight back, or are Bangladesh going to keep this momentum and win the series 2-0? I think in terms of changes, Bangladesh, I think they'll be hesitant to change this winning combination again, although I wouldn't mind seeing them drop Shafail. They didn't really use him for another batsman like Mominul or Mahmudullah. Someone like that, I think that would be a good thing for Bangladesh to do. And really, they're allowed to do that now because they're producing result-oriented pitches. That's another thing about Bangladesh's rise, is that back in the day, they would produce flat tracks that really kept them in games because they didn't have the bowling attack to take 20 wickets. But now that they have that, they're producing more spinner-friendly tracks, result-oriented pitches, and that's helping them. That they're definitely playing to their strength, and every team does it. So I don't see why Bangladesh should be criticised for doing the same. As for Australia, well, I think they'll make some changes. Obviously, one enforced with Josh Hazlewood. He's missing out. Now, interestingly, Steve O'Keefe was drafted into the squad. He's suspended currently by Cricket New South Wales due to some disciplinary issues, some alcohol-fueled incidents. I would have thought that John Holland would have got a go. He's been performing really well in domestic cricket recently. But Steve O'Keefe was very good in that India series. It's just a little bit weird because he has had the disciplinary issues, which I believe were the reason he was left out of the original squad. So that's a bit bizarre to me, if I'm being honest. But I would expect him to come in now because they didn't bring in a fast bowler to replace Hazlewood. And Jackson Bird is like Josh Hazlewood light. And I think Australia would have seen Josh Hazlewood isn't quite as effective in Asia. So they'll be thinking another spin is probably the way to go. So I would expect Steve O'Keefe to come back into the team, another left-arm orthodox bowler, and he can also handle the bat. A little bit harsh on Mitchell Swepson, who was already in the squad, but I can't see them giving a debut to Swepson in this now really crunch game for Australia. I think Usman Khawaja is also under pressure. Hilton Cartwright could come into the team with Stephen Smith coming back up to 3, Cartwright coming in at 4. He also provides a seam bowling option, albeit a mediocre one, but if Australia want to go with that, then that would balance the side a little bit more because they've only got Pat Cummins then as a fast bowler, so Hilton Cartwright can provide a second option. And I think Glenn Maxwell will live to survive another day due to Usman Khawaja's struggles in Asia. But that is it for me today. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. If you did, you can check it out. We're on iTunes, SoundCloud, and YouTube. All those links can be found on the Twitter page. And as always, thanks for listening, and I'll see you later.